Alright guys, today we're going to talk about the laws of exponents, and we're going to break this down into two parts. So I want you to think of numbers as two different numbers. We have big numbers and then we have little bitty numbers. So let's start with our big numbers. Our big numbers are going to be numbers that you're used to multiplying by, like 3 times 2, 4 times 6, so on and so forth. And then our small numbers, those are going to be our exponents. But when we get to the exponents, they have their own laws. Today we're only going to focus on multiplying exponents here. So here we go. Let's look at the rule. The rule says that if you have a number to the m power times another number to the n power, notice that you are simply just adding the little bitty numbers, or you're adding the exponent. The exponents, that is your law that we need to follow today. But we're going to break down this example into two parts. We're going to break it down into big numbers, and then we're going to look at our little numbers, our exponents, and apply the law. So here we go. Let's multiply our big numbers first. Let's start here. 5 times 6. That's easy. 5 times 6 is 30. However, when we multiply our exponents, what you do is you look at the letter a to the 5th. We're going to multiply the a to the little 5 to the a to the little 6, or those exponents. And if we go back over to our law, it says you add the exponents. So this would be a to the 11th. But why is the rule when we multiply exponents, you actually add them? If you go back to grade school, you did something that was very similar to what we're about to do here, like a factor tree. A to the 5th can be written as a times a times a times a times a. And the same thing for a to the 6th. A. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If I were to multiply all of these together, I would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That would be a to the 11th. So when you're doing these examples today, think of two things. Start with the big numbers. Those are our coefficients. We multiply those the regular way we've been multiplying numbers our whole life. But then when you multiply your exponents, remember the rule, you're adding the exponent. Let's do a couple examples here before you start to practice. Let's look at number 3. So number 3, we're going to start with our big numbers, our coefficients. Well, if you look here, there's a 1 here and a 1 here. And 1 times 1 is 1. If you want to do 1 times 1 is 1, you can. Now let's look at our y's. Y to the 3rd times y to the 2nd. Remember, when you're multiplying exponents, it has its own little rule. You're adding them. So that would be y to the 5th. And then z to the 1st times z to the 3rd. We apply the law of exponents, is z to the 4th. And you would actually write that as y to the 5th, z to the 4th. It is not necessary to have the 1 in front. Let's look at another example here. Let's look at number 8. Again, let's break it down into two parts. Let's multiply our big numbers, our coefficients. Then we'll multiply our laws, or our exponents here, using the law of exponents. So we're going to put a little 1 right here. Let's multiply our big numbers. 8 times negative 1 is negative 8. But if I take negative 8, use the calculator if you need to, and multiply that times 1/4, you get negative 2. Now let's apply our laws of exponents. Let's start with our letter c. Since all of this is being multiplied, we're just going to multiply c squared times c to the 1st. That would be c to the 3rd. Now let's multiply d to the 1st times d to the 2nd. That would be d to the 3rd. Now, if you are ever doing these problems and you go, I don't know if that answer is correct, pick a random number for c, pick a random number for d, and use stow. We talked about the stow function on the TI-84. Stow a random number for c, stow a random number for d, type in your problem, type in your answer, you should get a match. One more, let's look at 11. So 11 is going to require us to do a little bit of what I like to call a multi-distribution. So here we go. We're going to start with this guy. Multiply the coefficients, the big numbers. 7 times 2, 14. A to the 1st times a to the 1st is a to the 2nd. Now, since there's not a b to multiply with another b, you still have to put that letter into the actual problem there. It's got to be multiplied into it. Now let's do another distribution. Let's multiply this guy times 4b. Start with your big numbers or your coefficients. 7 times 4, that's positive 28. There's not an a to multiply another a with, so we have to still put it in the problem. And then b to the first times b to the first is b to the second. And then our last one here. Start with your coefficient, your big numbers. 7 times negative 6 is negative 42. And since there's not an AB to multiply to another AB, we just simply put that in the problem. And yes, you could pick a random number for A, pick a random number for B, stow that, type in your problem, type this guy in, you should get a match.